I'm a little too tired to be doing this. I still don't have my good mic out of storage. But hey, I need to film content because there's not really many good movies coming out right now. A little dry spell, and then my last video, well, you ever heard the phase one for me, one for them? Yeah, that one was a little more for me. But this one's a little more for, I guess, everyone else. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the new year. And this is the first piece of media that I watched of the new year. And I really wish I watched it last year because boy, oh boy, was I surprised of how intricate this show was. Creature Commandos. Am I saying that right? Don't want to upset anybody. Creature Commandos. I was a little skeptical about James Gunn and, you know, what he's trying to do with the DC universe, you know, just because like it's been for most super movies, it's been a run, I guess. And you know, maybe it's time for them to die a little bit, but you know, that Superman trailer did look kind of cool. And well, I only started watching this show because of one character, and we'll get to that when we break down. And I just kind of want to more or less kind of like think about each episode individually. But yeah, I started watching it. It's literally a day watch. There's only 7 episodes, and they're like 20-30 minutes long. Like you can watch this in an afternoon if you really got a lazy Sunday going on. So for those who don't know, I don't know much about Creature Commandos as far as like comic wise. I know a little bit about some of the characters based on their other affiliations in the DC universe, like Dr. Phosphorus here. Other than that, I don't know much. And it's you know, like James Gunn, he does a lot of team up stuff. So I mean, he's good at that. I can say that much about James Gunn. But yeah, it's basically a group of monsters that kind of like I guess it's like their Suicide Squad, but it's just monsters to basically. And in fact, you technically within the universe of James Gunn's canon, like this is pretty much a sequel to James Gunn's Suicide Squad. You know, the last one that came out, Rick Flag Sr. is in it, and his son, who's in the Suicide Squad, you know, RIP, if I believe he died, if I remember. And then Peacemaker happened, and that was the whole thing. What's up with Peacemaker next season? Is that still coming out? I don't know. Remember, didn't Shazam have like a cameo at the end of Peacemaker? Anyway, characters from Peacemaker are in there, and also the Weasel, he is in this one. So I'm like, oh, this is Amanda Waller, you know. I was like, oh, this is cool. Okay, there's some continuity here, right? And I'm gonna just say this now about Creature Commandos. I think the thing that I enjoy most about it is I love when a show makes characters interesting and I don't know about them. I love getting to learn new characters that I've just never heard of and actually generally liking them. And that is one thing about Creature Commandos that I enjoyed the most. I had not heard of any of these characters really. I mean, some of these characters are just from works of fiction like Frankenstein and the Bride, right? And they have references and other characters are references from literature, but that's the one thing I love. I love that they were able to make these characters and give them backstories that were quite well fleshed out. And so with each episode, you get to explore each one of these characters, how they fit in the team now, and their upbringing. So, I mean, the first episode, it's literally you're entering the team. They gotta go Polkastan is in danger. We gotta go. There's some sorceress, you know, attacking, and we gotta help or whatever, you know, blah blah blah. And Polkastan is not even a real country if I'm correct, but yeah, that's the whole ordeal, you know. And then she's got all, and like the sorceress, you know, Cersei, she's got all these you know, incel like followers. I mean, I feel like it poked fun about like a lot of like some modern things that I see today, and I just thought that was super funny. But yeah, first episode, introduce characters. That's what we do, right? Second episode was messed up. First of all, I was like, oh, I forget how like Jane Gunn, you know, he's kind of goes there sometimes, especially like when I was watching Guardians of the Galaxy 3. But like the second episode goes into the backstory of the Bride, and I actually read Frankenstein when I was in high school, and it's a tragic book, you know, and it's a very interesting book too. It's a very tragic book, and it's morally a questionable book about like, you know, creating life. And then I had to do a whole report on like, what was it, Hegel's master slave dialogue, which is a whole other thing, right? But in the book of Frankenstein, you know, the monster does want a bride, and Victor's like, oh, that's questionable, I don't want to do that. And eventually in the book, spoilers, right, he doesn't make the bride, and then Frankenstein monster lashes out, and the rest is history. You can read the book, right? And this one, he actually makes the bride. And what I found interesting was the like moral, like they kind of, the monster did, his name is Eric in this one. And I don't know, did Frankenstein ever have a name actually, Eric? I think it was just Frankenstein's monster. They do call him Eric if I remember correctly, but he does give the like, oh, like I deserve to have love, don't I deserve love? And then Victor's like, well, is it morally right for me to make another human being? Like, you know, but the craziest part about that second episode is showing what it was like to basically reanimate a dead body as an adult. And that's something I never really thought about, because like here we think that, oh, he's making a bride for Frankenstein. Isn't that like kind of, in a way it's twisted, but it's kind of sweet, right? Frankenstein has the monster, like he has flowers already and everything. That's so cute, you know? And then she wakes up, the bride, and she's terrified. She's absolutely terrified. And I'm just like, oh, I never even stopped to think about that. Like if you imagine you woke up today, like you were not living, and then just boop, you're alive. You know, babies don't have the brain development to like comprehend like a lot of life yet, and they have to take years for their brains to develop, and your brain doesn't completely develop until like what, you're 25, right? And even then, once you're 25, it takes you like another 2 years to kind of like figure out how to use that brain, right? But she's alive. Just like that, she's alive, and she sees the horrors. You know, she sees Eric, the monster. She's terrified, and he's like, whoa, I just want to love you. I just want to, like, you know, you're my bride. And then Victor's like, whoa, we have to like slow the brakes here, you know. And then the rest of the thing is like you're seeing this creation of like, oh, he's teaching her, and the monster, Frankenstein's monster, Eric, he's getting like frustrated. He's getting like, I want love now, and he's like, well, you can't have it yet. She doesn't understand love. She doesn't understand speaking, anything like that. And in the way, like it's frustrating it's a little frustrating for Eric. It gets weirder though. Don't get me wrong. We'll get to that later. But it's kind of like, it is just kind of ultimately sad. And then it gets messed up because like this whole dynamic, it's crazy, because I was like, James, I know what you're doing here. I don't know if I appreciate it. It's messed up. I saw where it was going. I was like, oh, I'm like, you know, Victor's basically teaching his daughter how to do stuff, and then just ends up doing his daughter. Like, what the hell, James Gunn? What the? And then you have boy Eric here just walks in on that. That scene was messed up. Like, I was like in my bed early in the morning watching this. I was just like, hand over my mouth, like, what? No. And then you're like, oh, I'm gonna like just, Eric's gonna just start killing now. That was a messed up scene. And I was like, oh man, as soon as I got to the first episode, I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of cool. When I got to that, I was like, oh, I know I'm going to get in for a ride here. And the whole dynamic of the bride and the Frankenstein, you know, oh man, that's a messed up one. And then he spends like so much time just trying to like find her, because like the way they tease up Frankenstein and the bride, it made it seem like they were like long lost lovers who just got separated. But no, it is super twisted. We'll get back to more of that one later. But so next episode, you know, the Tin Man, which whole reason I started watching this show was because my feed was a lot of Tin Man recently. I wonder why, but Tin Man, G.I. Robot is my comfort character. I love G.I. Robot. G.I. Robot is so wholesome. He's such a pal. He's such a buddy. And Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, protect this robot at all costs. Great overall great episode. A lot of little funny things, especially when he's like, are you a Nazi? No, that's exactly what a Nazi would say. But yeah, G.I. Robot was just created to destroy Nazis. It was dope. You know, it was dope just watching him going, boop, 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 boop. But what I've seen other creators talk about is when G.I. Robot, like, you know, he has feelings. Like, he's not considered like just a robot. Like, if I'm correct, they label him as AI, that he's able to learn, and he has like some emotions and feeling. Like, yeah, he has like one adjective, but he does express that like he wants to hang out with his boys. He misses his boys. He wants to be with them, you know, just like one last time. But he's disregarded because he was brought into a world that was harsh, right? And then as times progressed, it's like, oh, we don't need this as much. Well, you know, yeah, maybe eventually, but and then he gets a friend, and I've seen people talk about this where like he was befriended by this person humanized him, this person like, you know, was there with him, but then this person turned out to be the very thing that he dislikes, and like when he goes, oh boy, you know, like I have to kill a friend of mine because this is my objective, you know, this is my objective, and it is both tragic but also like Nazis, man, you gotta shoot down some Nazis, okay? I can't blame G.I. Robot for doing that, you know. But I love G.I. Robot character, and then also the moments, what I love is seeing him with Nina. You're seeing that bond they're forming there, and I'm like, okay, do we ship Nina and G.I. Robot? They're all freaky, right? Yeah, G.I. Robot's great, and I can go on with G.I. Robot. But fourth episode was really messed up too, because for the most part, the Weasel's all like, and you're just like, okay, Weasel, right? He doesn't really, for I remember the Suicide Squad, he was just kind of like a joke character, like a lot of those characters in that movie who just end up dying, right? Like 40 cast members just dead. Although that scene in the Suicide Squad was pretty epic. They had that song, those are people who died. You know, that was pretty cool when that happened. But when I tell you that Weasel's backstory like really hurt me, because like, why James? I'm asking you again. I'm once again asking you why James, that you gave the character who's like the most incoherent, like probably the most tragic backstory. Just a little weasel creature playing with children, having a good time. And then some old man's like, I gotta kill the weasel. And he's not doing anything wrong. And then there's a school fire, you know, the kids are burning alive. And then they blame the weasel. And he's trying to save the children. And it's like, dang, it's just, you know, I've seen this on our own news before. You know, they're prioritizing the wrong thing. Save the child first, then get the weasel, you know? But like, oh man, it was so tragic. Like, they could have saved that child. The policeman could have saved the child, but no, they're like, let's shoot the weasel who's holding a child. It's a stupid decision. Just stop and think. But then again, like, if I was in that situation, if anyone here were in that situation, and you saw a weasel carrying a child around, what would you do? You know? Would you shoot the weasel? You know, like, would you call the authorities? Like, what would you do in that situation? I think if I was in that situation, I think I'd be curious to see, like, what's going on. Because because my head would be like, is the child dead already? Because then what more can I do, you know? And it's not dead. And it's like, well, what's the weasel want with the child? It wasn't eating the child. It was dragging the body. Overall, it's just tragic. You know, whether morally what you would do in that situation. Very tragic story. I'm sorry, Weasel. I hope somebody eventually understands what you're saying in, like, a later season. Because you deserve a redemption arc. You know, your lawyer needs to come for you, right? Now we get back to Frankenstein. Okay, no, it's not. So here's the thing. I'm going to say this about Frankenstein. Voiced by David Harbour. Apparently, James Gunn is going to try to, like, keep the live action people with, like, the cartoon people. So if Frankenstein's monster, Eric, ever gets live action, I guess it's David Harbour. Which is, you know, I'm fine with that. I like David Harbour. So the only thing I really have to say about Eric as a character is that he reminds me of Kronk a little bit, if Kronk was super deranged and kind of a psychopath. Well, I wouldn't say he's a psychopath. He does murder people. Yeah. I was gonna say sociopath, but no, he's definitely a psychopath. Cause like, in a way, he's lovable. You know, he's kind of lovable. You're kind of like, oh, the man just wants love. But like, the things he's willing to do to get love, that's where he gets twisted. I mean, he finds comfort in this like old blind woman and this dog, and kind of has a nice little life with them. This company, this family he gets there. But because he has this mindset of like, no, the bride was made for me, and he's delusional. He's delusional. Like, she's made for me. She needs to be with me. And that is what she was made for. Technically, yes. But are we defined by what we were born into, or do we have the right to make our own life for ourselves? You know, the bride deserves to have her own life, and she's badass, and she like, just look at her. In a way, I get it, Eric. I get it. So yeah, and then he ends up killing this woman, which is tragic. But I do like his interactions with Flag. I think they were really funny. I enjoyed the Clayface brought into all this. I enjoyed the scenes where he's at the college and he's like looking at the bushes like, I lost my contact lens, you know? But yeah, he is kind of lovable, but he's just crazy. And he's been stalking the bride for years. And yeah, that doesn't make it any better, you know? I was hoping though, there's part of me was like, oh man, I kind of wish that like he got to warn the group. He tries to warn the group later on, but like the bride doesn't let him do anything. And I've wondered, okay, if he got to warn the group, like, what if she saw him any differently? Part of me is like, oh, it's like they technically they were made together, but he's crazy, and maybe she does deserve better. There's like the shipping part of me that's like, oh, but also like, yeah, he's crazy, and she maybe she does actually deserve much better than that. But yeah, he is a character that I like, but I am aware of how messed up he is and how delusional he is. I mean, even at the very end of the series, he's like talking to another old lady and like, no, she's just playing cat and mouse with me. Like, don't you get it? Like, she's down bad, you know? Like, some of my favorite scenes where he's like talking about like Rick's love life, and he's like explaining it through movies. Like, what did he say? Like the Titanic or something? Or How Harry Met Sally. I think he was describing his, which was just funny. It's just funny that this man has lived this long and he knows all these references. But let's get to Phosphorus. Phosphorus had what I'd say probably the most exciting backstory, mainly because it included Batman and Rupert Thorne. Dr. Phosphorus is very tragic. Like, but all the backstories, you know, I think that Tin Man, I think G.I. Robot had probably the least tragic backstory, actually, all things considering. But yeah, Phosphorus, like, I don't know much about Dr. Phosphorus. If I'm correct, wasn't he in Batman Beyond? But like, to have this guy in the ranks of the creature commandos. He's got a powerhouse, like freaking burn people's faces and everything. But his story was, in a way, like I said, it was tragic, but also satisfying. The fact that he was able to get revenge on the people who like murdered his family, and then just become like the crime boss, right? Until, you know, Batman had to ruin all the fun. Which I did appreciate the cameos put in this. Like, there was a scene where like it showed all the dead heroes, and like you saw like Wonder Woman, Superman, and Peacemaker. Apparently Shaggy had a cameo in this. There was just a lot of little reference here and there that I'm like, there was a Mortal Kombat reference that, you know, I appreciate. I appreciate that James Gunn did, and it wasn't like, I didn't feel like it was in your face like references. It was just kind of like, oh, this is like, when it showed Batman, it wasn't like one of those like, I feel like they do this in like in Marvel movies where it's like they kind of do the pause where it's like, okay, look at the guy, and then they move on, right? I feel like, oh yeah, Dr. Phosphorus, yeah, he's in Gotham, yeah, like of course Batman would be there. It didn't feel like it was forced to me, and that's one thing I did appreciate about this show. But I did like the scenes where Phosphorus he's you know, wandering the streets because he's lost, looking for his crew, right? And he's talking to this child, and he's remembering like what it was like to have a family, you know. And I'm just thankful that the family didn't like super freak out when he saw them playing with their child. He's just like, where's the castle? And they're just, it's that way. And it's like, thanks, you know. And then like the rest of the game joins up, you know, after the bride and Nina go into I guess a brothel, and they make quick work of these jerks who are like taking advantage of the women there. Just because they're prostitutes doesn't mean you have to be a dick about it, guys. That's one thing I love about the bride, how just like tough, tenacious she is. Life made her that way, which is very tragic in a way. But it's a good contrast to like Nina's character, who's kind of like shy and like timid. But I think the scenes where you have them two together is like what makes like them a good dynamic, because like the bride just keeps a wall around her heart, you know, and because she's been hurt a lot, you know, and she's very like aggressive. And many times Nina's like, why are you like this, you know, can you like not be so mean, and vice versa, where like Nina's kind of like shy and not as assertive, and the bride's like, hey, you know, you toughen up, right? And I love seeing that dynamic between those two. Unfortunately it will be short-lived soon, once we talked about Nina last episode, and then the sad moment, right? Man, the saddest part about Nina's backstory was like the situation with both. I mean, her dad dies, but spoiler. But one of the saddest things I saw in there was Nina. She's born, right? And immediately once her mother like sees how she is, it's like she almost dissociates, which I don't know if like, this is something I often wondered that happens with mothers. If like your child is born with disability, do you like fear? Like, I'm sure there are people, whether it's a mom or dad, who like fear for their child. Like, how are they gonna survive? Like, what's the move here, right? And I guess that's the best way I can put that scenario, because we can get real dark with that real quick. But I loved the enthusiasm that the father had, where he was like, this is my child, and I'm gonna do everything I can to make her have a happy life. Unfortunately, her life was sad, but he did what he could. And it's a fortunate situation that, you know, even if you could have a supportive parent, and life could still suck. It's a very sad thing. And for him to experiment on his own daughter, that's a whole other moral question you can have there. But he did what he could for her. I mean, turns her to a fish person. But what I would have liked to seen though in her backstory, I wish she at least had one friend, because I feel like she could have had at least one friend. I feel like if I met a fish person, I want to be their friend. I would watch that movie in a heartbeat. You know, I could see that movie happening. You know, like a young buck makes friends with a fish person, a fish lady, and they all get into shenanigans. Like, okay, what crazy things you can do? They're gonna find a way to like, hey, tunnel through the sewers, and like, so you can like, you know, I don't know, open this gate and get us into this abandoned building, this abandoned arcade or something. Like, I don't know, like, it would have been cool. That's my I'm thinking about it. But anyways, tragic backstory. Her father dies trying to basically like, hey, you know, she's getting arrested, right? You know, arresting a fish person, which is a whole other weird thing. He dies, tragic. She gets sent away. But even more tragic is, this is like the point I felt of the whole entire series for me, was like, I reference Godzilla a lot in my videos. And I'm gonna do it again. But if you ever watch Godzilla, like, was it Planet of the Monsters, the second one, which is like Battle on the City Edge or something like that, City on Battle's Edge, I can't remember exactly what it is, but they basically like make Godzilla as a city. That's another thing. But there's those alien race, are like, they basically want to become one with technology to better enhance themselves, but it costs their own humanity, and their whole goal was, well, we want to defeat Godzilla, right? And in order to defeat the monster, one has to become a monster, right? And so why I say that is, like, when I see this towards the end of it, you know, their whole goal was to protect the princess, right? And then they're like, but then they did it, they put Cersei away, and then they're like, but Cersei says that she's evil and she's gonna take over the world. So then I have to go back to like stop her, right? But then Flag doesn't believe it, and turns out he was right. But they don't find out till later. Eric tries to warn them, but the bride stops him from saying anything. So that they want Nina to do the final blow. And at this point, she has never really killed anybody. She's not a violent person. And that kind of brings you, when you have like a team dynamic, is like everybody has their special skill, right? Not one person can be like an all-around thing. Nina's expertise is water, right? Like if you need her to do something water-based, she's got you. But as far as like being a stone cold killer, that's not Nina. That's not how she is. She may be labeled as a monster, but she's not a monster, right? It's a whole question though when I saw Nina getting ready to try to kill the princess, because they basically almost like force her to do so, right? There's like do certain actions make you a monster? Like, does society make you a monster? Or like, can you keep your humanity? Can you like be saved if you don't fall into these things? Because like a lot of the other like creatures, right? They are violent, they do bad things, and a lot of reasons why they do bad things is because of how badly they've been treated. So it's like they kind of embrace the monster within. Versus Nina though, she didn't want to be a monster, you know. She didn't ask for this, and there are some like nuances there, because some of the creatures were once human, but she doesn't kill the princess. She in fact gets killed herself. And in a way, I often wonder if Nina wasn't pressured to be a monster, because so many times she kept telling, who cares if a human dies, it's just one less human in the world. But I do feel Nina still kind of considers herself to be human, and not like the literal sense, but more like having humanity. But I mean, she was peer pressured, and if she didn't do it, like in her mind, she was told that the world would end. But because Nina slowly was tempted into being more of a monster to end a human being's life, it got her killed. And I often wonder if she didn't do that, if she like stood her ground and was like, no, I'm not gonna do this, she wouldn't have been killed. Like she would have just like, they would eventually, and the information when it came in, none of that would have happened. And I don't know if that is a lesson that James is going to try to put in there, but it was like, just because society tells you to be a monster doesn't mean you have to be one. Doesn't mean you have to destroy the people who like wronged you, you know? Because there are some people out there who do see your worth, and you do have value. And even towards the end, like I remember they tell the bride like, hey, like you did a good job out there, and like you have some worth to you, you know? But I really hope Nina's not fully dead. I wanted more interactions with G.I. Robot and her. I was very sad when G.I. Robot like gets to dies, and I was like, there's no way G.I. Robot's fully dead though. They got to rebuild him, and thankfully they do. Overall, Creature Commandos was really good, and I don't know if I fully got all my wording down right on how I was trying to talk about this show, but go watch it. It's just a good show. I'm really hoping for season 2. Is there season 2? We'll find out. Juice out.